So first and foremost, before I start with design, I usually always go and try to find a widest smiling picture that I can get. Why is this important? Because many times, whoever takes the photos will simply, just go in, click on the camera, not even look if the patient is really smiling. So the single most important thing you need to do when you take a picture is make sure that your patient is actually smiling. Because now we have portrait enhancement, we have many things that there's many mistakes that we can overcome. But this one, if the information is not there, it's not okay. So let's say normally I just go in and I select with a small star the picture that I want to use. And then we're just going to go ahead and create a smile design. All right. You see it's very easy to select because I have the star there. And I will explain the interface a little bit and the things that are important. So first of all, here I have a new feature, which is I can continue with the original picture, or you can have a portrait enhancement, which is if your picture in any way doesn't have a nice color, nice background, nice everything, you're gonna want to use this option because it will preserve everything. It will just make it look everything else much better. I will show you some examples later on. But in our case, this is a studio picture, so I'm not gonna use it. I will show you later on. Now, the moment that you go next, your phone becomes like a console, right? You hold it like this, and then you have your two thumbs to do everything. So here is the lip contour. Usually there's nothing that I need to change here because this is an automated function that works very well, but it is enough to explain the way things work. So I have two arrows on one side, which I can cycle through the points, and I can also select the points just by pressing with the finger. And here on this side, I have a trackpad. And with the trackpad, very simply with my thumb, I can move the items. Okay, that's it. So let's say if I want to delete a point, you just go in and you put it to the trash here, and that's it. Okay. If I want to add a point, similarly, I can just go to this plus, and if I want to reset anything, I have this the other small bit there. So here, again, I'm not gonna worry too much about it. And now I have the restorative space. This is the important step. So here I can just select first, I select the midline. Remember what we said initially. First is you position the smile on the face. So here it's very simple. If you're in a case where you have like a post-ortho situation, what does it mean? Can I change now? If it was before ortho, then I can put it here. It doesn't matter. Because it means that I'm designing to give the orthodontist a reference. But now, because it's prosthetics, first decision is very simple. Ortho or no ortho. There is two scenarios in which you can change. Full arch implants, if you do all on X, or if you do ortho. Otherwise, you can play maybe 0.5 millimeter right and left, because otherwise you compromise your papilla. That's your limit there. Okay, then you have these two sides which you can move simultaneously or independently, and you have the proportion. So that's pretty much the kind of tooling that you have here. So I'm gonna just adjust the proportions first, and here again something very easy to think about. There is two ways you can go about the proportions. One, you can assume that your central is correct. If you assume that your central is correct, then you get where your canines should be. which is exactly the problem that we had at our motivation, because my canines are too much out of the arch and respectively the premolars and all of that. If for some reason you distrust your centrals, you assume they are too big or too small or whatsoever, then what you can do is go and actually change this for let's say you take your canines as a reference. So if I put the canine in its respective position, then I can just go and, just a second, wait, like this. So if I'm gonna put the canines here, it's gonna tell me where the centrals should be. So you see now I see the distance of the centrals I need to cut. And if I don't have any of this, you can just go about the wings of the nose. It's also a reference where the canine position should be. This is just like for the old dentures. Now, the curve, the two curves. When you take any of these decisions, usually you should be looking at the documentation all the time. So this is, let's say I will open an intraoral picture here. You see it on the side there. Just for us to be able to discuss. Okay, so first, incisal edge. Incisal edge position, traditionally in our education, is the single most important reference. That's where you start design. Why? Because it's the part where you have the aesthetics and your function converging. And you will see, I will explain much better the incisal edge position when we go to blueprint and when we talk about vertical dimension, because there's three skeletal scenarios here which are very different. Class 1, class 2, class 3. They behave different. So in this particular case, I want you to think of the incisal curve metaphorically, just to simplify, as function, right? Why? Because every time that we, at least in pros, most of the time we increase the length, what does happen functionally if I increase length? You increase the functional load in the system. Okay? All the time. Now, this means that when I'm taking this decision, I'm looking at things such as, you see there on the screen, as being a class 3. Do I want a more overbite here? Yes or no? No, right? Because these patients are used to a lot of freedom and they will break things. So in this type of case, which is still the skeletal is a type class 3, you want to have like maximum 1 millimeter, I would say even less, like 0.5 millimeter overbite, right? That's it. Keep it on the safe zone. So technically speaking, your incisal edge changes your overbite and your overjet. And overbite and overjet behave differently depending on the skeletal class, but every time you increase these two, you create more functional load. So when you're thinking at what would look good, you're also thinking at what makes sense functionally. And in essence, whenever you take any decision, it's very easy to move a tooth on the face, right? But when I'm moving this tooth on the face, I'm thinking about a aesthetic argument, which is clearly, that's why I have real-time in-face visualization. I can visualize how it looks. I'm thinking of a functional argument. For example, the functional argument here, I don't want to make the incisal edge longer because I'm going to make a riskier situation. And I'm thinking also about if I have like a biologic argument, right? For example, a biologic argument is, you know, in theory, I would actually want to have it a little bit longer because I would need to prep less. That's an example, okay? Now, ideal in design is when for the same decision, your arguments converge, which means you have and a biologic reason and a functional reason and an aesthetic reason to put it there. If you're doing this exercise and you realize that your arguments are diverging, that usually means that you're already in a compensatory situation, like you are out of indication for a reason or another. So this is when it comes to the incisal edge. So incisal edge here, I want it, keep it as is. What about the gingival one? Gingival here, it's all about biology. That's how you think about it, okay? Why? Because it's going to be the place where human biology will interface with prosthetic design. And what concepts do you have there? You have things like functional attached tissue, cemento-animal junction. All of these things have a biologic cost. So if you go up, you can be, for example, over the cemento-animal junction, be on a root. If you go up, you might end up cutting too much from the tissue and have not enough of a keratinized tissue for protection. Biologic width, how much it would reflect on reducing bone and all of that. So when you are doing things aesthetically, you're thinking in the back of your mind about the biologic and the functional cost of your actions. Okay? You can also do it the other way. Think biologically or think functionally and then see how it looks aesthetically. It's not wrong. It's just at the end of the day, you anyways need to combine these narratives. So, things are quite simple here. I'm not going to do any big changes. I will just adapt. The main thing here is, the main play in this case is pretty much how we're going to manage the space, right? So constraints, if we are to talk about constraints in this case, what are our limitations here? Incisal edge we cannot move. What other constraints do we have? Space, we cannot manage too much the space for the pontic. And then I will tell you another constraint. It's like budget. So the patient, of course, doesn't want to do a full mouth, and it doesn't make sense to do a full mouth. So in this case, you shouldn't touch the lower. Okay? What else is going to be probably tricky here? Canine guidance. If I look at this case, for sure canine guidance will be a problem, because the difficult thing here, usually, if you put the canines where you want them to have guidance, they interfere in protrusion. But last but not least, probably the most difficult part will be to get papillas in the second quadrant. Then we have a deciduous tooth in the first quadrant. How are we going to manage that? Extract, do a pontic, place an implant. What do you want to do? I never extract this, unless you're forced. Why extract? What's the point? I mean, there are two scenarios. One, if it's going to have like a root resorption, you can always do a pontic or place an implant then. Two, most of them become ankylosed. They are like an implant, but they also have like an attachment, which is actually much better than an implant. That's the difference between an ankylosed tooth and an implant, is that the implant doesn't have any attachment. Okay, so in this particular case, the other thing or the last thing that you're looking at when you are going to select shape is, Pablo, if you have anything to add, please feel free. Yeah. No, just if you have, not don't feel obliged. Just saying.
I feel so. This is just because I know the patient went through ortho. There we go. So the patient went through ortho and they managed to fix a class 3 by protruding a lot. So I think we have to take into consideration as a partial limitation at the very least, tissue management comes with a large protrusion of the anteriors, which is always something that needs to be compensated if we're going to manage the tissue. So protrusion led to basically...
What do you mean with the
exactly.
You mean the flaring?
Exactly.
Okay.
So I know that my collaborator, what they did was they angled the roots through the treatment plan. So this is something we should take into consideration even at this stage. It will become more present in 3D.
So what he's saying, because I think you're using the wrong word. Protrusion is like what you want to say is the flaring.
Yeah.
Is the fact. This is true. It's like the angulation, the angulation of the crown. Many times in ortho is like flared, which kind of like it's always going to be a profile issue. You understand? Because you never want to finish with the final veneer like this. So you have two options. You can compensate. Again, you can leave your veneer flared. This is not nice because the reflections look like a plastic, whatever you do, because you're only going to have reflections on the incisal of the tooth and everything else will not behave nice with light. The other problem is if you want to make it straight, you either have a very aggressive profile if you don't want to prep, or you need to prep a lot. That's what he's saying, correct? Yeah. So another constraint is like the flaring of the teeth. So there, we can manage this when we get into the blueprint on how we select the anatomy, right? Yeah. That we need a very accentuated 3 planes anatomy to help us. So we don't need to prep too much, because if you have like a flared tooth, want to make a flat tooth and use a flat anatomy, you need to cut a lot, or you have an ugly profile. Clear? All right, so once I put the restorative space in place, then I go and I select shapes. When you select the shapes, beyond the argument of I like this or I like that, what you should look at is selecting a shape which, let's say, makes sense in terms of being able to achieve. So for example, let me give you a negative example first. If I'm going to use, imagine something like this, look at the line in the mesial. You know, I will never be able to get this shape because I would have to do like a big plasty there in the mesial papilla, and then I would have a collapse of the papilla there if I go for this, or the shape would look different in the first place. So when you select anatomy, you're always a little bit bound to select something that fits your papilla, and many times your root configuration. Or you need to change the root configuration to fit your shape. Either way, your shape will need to fit your root. Okay, so I will select these centrals and plan for a plasty there. Of course, I am much more limited here than I will be in blueprint. And with the canines, you see I have a toggle here. Do you see this toggle? This toggle is between rotate and translate. So one, you can rotate the tooth. So if I'm on here, I can rotate also like this. The one thing that I love about natural shapes is canines. Because in canines is already, you can get the very beautiful natural designs. Why? Canines have this multiplanar anatomy in this mesiopalatal embrasure, right? In a natural canine, there's so many planes there, and when we look at walks-up, they're always very simplified. So here, I can create any shape of the canine just by rotating it. You see? And usually, I always go for this angle to be as complex as possible. So again, my goal when I do design is all about how do I create more feature richness, because I know I'm going to lose some in the process, so I want to start with a lot. So me personally, this is just me personally, you don't have to do what I do, but the guys know I hate mirroring, so I never use it, because for me mirroring kills half of the richness of the design in one go. I know it's easy, but it comes, you have to understand it comes with a cost and doesn't bring a lot of benefit, because in the end, even if you choose the same shapes and everything, you will see, you know, because all the roots on the sides are different, the tissue is different, you still anyways don't get what you think you will get. You will just get the patient telling you, yes, you see, but here is a little bit more different than here. So you just get yourself in trouble. So here, for example, if you look at this premolar, what I want is, what is the problem here? Look how high that papilla is. So I just want to select something that is a little bit, I reduce it. Like this. And then I rotate it a bit. I reduced it too much. Okay, so let me do this fast. Anatomy of the laterals, again, I never ever, like sometimes I mirror only centrals, I have to admit. Sometimes. Rare, if I'm lazy, I mirror centrals. But I never ever mirror anything else, especially canines and laterals. I find that you are just killing a lot of the potential character and beauty of it.
Actually, this is a saying in a lot of other visual fields. Symmetry is the composition of the lazy person.
Yeah, that's a good line. I like that. So here I'm just going to select something that is, you see, a more narrow lateral, because anyways I have a narrow space. And I will just play with its position. Okay. And rotate a bit. Too much. Okay. And now this will have to be a conversion here. Look the difference between these two. This is a canine, this is also a canine. Look at this nice mesial buccal angles. This is the simplified one. These are more complex, these two. This angle is what makes a lot the canine in how you perceive it. So remember, never take one that is just a line, okay? Just take anything that potentially gives you more features there. All right. So now, assume I have something which I'm happy with. I also like to create, sometimes I piss off my orthodontist, because at the end, when I align everything, I still create a little bit of 3D effect. In what sense? For example, if I don't have any papilla display, I will never put the central and the lateral perfectly in the same plane, because it's too flat. and you don't have papillas and everything. You know what I mean? When you just have, just contact areas like this. It looks like a bridge. And then you can do just a slight, even if you put it like 0.5 millimeter more palatal, you will see the optical effect is very different. So then I go to the face, and now it's going to render. As what happens in the rendering is you get the AI matches the pixels of your design to the pixels of your context. Yeah? This is how we are able to get the photorealism. And once this is done, we can immediately go in and create the video. So you see, now I have the design. And now I'm just gonna go like this. So this is already in a static way. I can show to my patient. Is there anything I want to change? Yes, I want to change the canine in the second quadrant. Yeah, it's like 2 Transylvanian. So I just go, yes. I just go here. And I will simply adjust this. Okay. And I re-render now. Yes.
At which picture you know already that the space for number 22 is enough, that this is sufficient for this plan?
You will know this accurately when you go to Blueprint. So imagine right now, and that's what I want to give the message. Smile design, you have to use it. This is like a very shallow interaction, fast iteration experience that you change your consultation to like visual. You can visualize with the patient. Okay, you can do in real time these things. Normally, like in the past, what did we do? We document the patient, send the patient home, then we ask the technician to do a walks-up, call the patient back, do a mock-up, all these things. Now, how it has changed? It has changed in the following way. We have the patient, we still document. We still are going to do everything in the same appointment. So after we document, we tell the patient, hey, have a coffee. And then we draft something like I did now. And then we call the patient in and we say, okay, this is pretty much what we want from this case. You always have to position design as intent. Okay? This is our intention, our vision, our whatnot. And then, first of all, your first goal is to make sure that you're in the same boat as a vision. And after that, you don't overpromise. You discuss constraints. The visual of what you do has to do the promising for you. Everything you say, you need to balance that. And you need to say, okay, this would mean that we would have to cut this tooth and do this and do that and do this and all of those things. Okay. I still needed to change it a little bit, but fine. I'm gonna do it later. Skip it. Now I'm just gonna go and generate the video. Very important to discuss in this stage what are your limits of the case. And I would also argue that you don't want to ask the patient, just go in and ask, what do you want, and blah, blah, because patients don't know what they want, okay? So that's why the best approach is you take the documentation and you start the conversation when you already built a draft, okay? Because your draft takes like 5 minutes. You build a draft on what you think, and and then you start the conversation and you say, okay, here, 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 we have problems. Okay? From my point of view, yes.
Only do it on clinical pictures, so no CBCT, so you don't know what's behind already.
Not now, not now, because I can do it. But imagine I do it, I spend like 2 hours, because that takes time, and then the patient says, very nice, good, I'll call you. Yeah? So, it's a matter of pragmatism. Why are you doing this? Are you doing this to treat the patient now? No, you're not treating the patient, you're having an initial conversation. Don't make the confusion between the two. It's like at this point, you just want to start a conversation on a draft and to understand where you're going with the conversation. That's the reason why in all processes you have an iterative approach. For example, an architect will not come to you in the first conversation and show you renderings of your final house. First, they need to put like a blank piece of paper and to just draw down and sketch how you want to divide the space in your house before they put the effort on building everything like this. Because otherwise, imagine they might end up doing all that work, charge you or not charge you for it, even worse, and then you realize it's something completely different direction than what you wanted. So then what's the point? So that's why you break it like this, right? The only exception is if you have a patient that already knows that you will treat, or a patient that is flying from I don't know where and you have much less time, so that's when you go to blueprint directly. When you're limited by time, or when acceptance of the case is not an issue, when this is not a conversation. But for everybody else, it's actually a protection for your time. It's not a matter of, this is not the actual plan. This is the hello. It's a much better hello than the hello without anything. Yeah? That's it. Don't make the confusion of thinking this can ever replace the real plan. No, it's a layer. What we are going to build now is a cake. A cake has layers. Yeah? This is the first layer of the cake. After that, we add the scan. After that, we add the CBCT and all of that. But the first question we ask is, hey, are you allergic to gluten, right? Because if you are, and we built all the cake and we did this for no reason, right? And then we have this. So usually you start the conversation. So this is important also how you're going to do it in your daily practice. First, you document the patient. Nothing will, I would advise you, even if we build tools that make pictures nice and all of that, take good pictures, take good documentation. Always document, and always document in the same way. Always take scans. I would argue always you need CBCT if you want to do like all the, especially rehabilitation and all of that. And then the patient gets a coffee, okay? You sketch something, you saw how much time it takes, you don't need anything fancy, right? You can even do it from your camera of your phone, okay? If you want, there's no problem. But then you call the patient and you say, okay, what's her name? And doesn't matter. It's like, Mary, okay? These are your problems. You always start the case presentation by going through the documentation and say, we have a problem here, we have a problem here, we have a problem here, a problem here. What I would think is, and our intent and our vision would be this, okay? And now, tell me what you think. Usually you will have something nice on the screen, because the patient does not imagine this, believe it or not. But the real thing that will actually, let's say, convince the patient is not this, it's your story. This I can tell you. If you just show something on the screen and then go and say, like the TikTok guy, and say, okay, like this, that doesn't generate the right experience that the patient wants to hear. What the patient needs to understand is that you have a plan for that. Huh? So most important, when this is on the screen, you talk about the problem and the plan to fix those problems. Okay? It's just an initial conversation. And what is your goal of the conversation? One, that you get on the same boat in terms of vision. Second, that you identify constraints. This is the part where the patient comes and tells you, I don't want to touch these teeth, I don't want to touch those teeth. Is you have some initial constraints that you have in your mind, but you need to identify all of them now. Constraints is clinical, is what can I touch? Gingiva, yes, no. Teeth, which one? Yes, no. Skeletal, is it an option? Yes, no. This is what you need to know. Only then you go in and build the other layers of the cake. Because if you don't do that, you're gonna go to your technician and you're gonna eventually generate costs and work which is trash. Make sense? Okay? And then the patient asks, okay, what's next? And what's next is we're gonna plan this precisely, okay? And usually the next time already they have like the blueprint and everything, and they already start at least the first, like they get like a detailed presentation of the plan, and they can do the cleaning or something like that, and then the whole thing starts. But usually this is how you couple things.